The last time I jumped in to play some Hell Let Loose, it was because they launched a new map, Eisenborn Ridge, and I was pleasantly surprised as the map was much more tightly designed with actual cover and some incredible looking weather effects that actually impacted the gameplay. And today I'm jumping back into Hell Let Loose to check out their new desert map, which has some epic looking sandstorms and visuals, pushing Hell Let Loose to a new plateau. Let's check it out. So the new map, Tobruk, is a densely packed desert with tons of buildings surrounded by a vast sea of sandy rock faces and military installations. And like Eisenborn Ridge from the previous update, there's been a clear change in the developer's approach to map design, with wide open fields being removed in favor of terrain that actually provides infantry players with ample cover. The central town itself is a maze of buildings, but the windows and general angles you'll need to clear are pretty well handled. You're still going to take fire from mystery angles and die a lot to unseen camping enemies. It is still Hell Let Loose at the end of the day, but it's far more manageable and much more fun than I've been used to with some of their previous maps. Literally, the first time I loaded into this map, I went neck deep into enemy territory and went on a fun little kill streak. And it felt like I was able to do this just because I could float between the buildings and all of the map's cover just to move around and surprise my enemies. No more sprinting across wide open fields with no cover. Now that said, the map isn't just all buildings. There's still plenty of open spaces around the main town that provide vehicles and or impatient infantry players alternative pathways around the main areas of combat. And out here, the improved approach to terrain design really shows. There's tons of hills and little dips in between them that you can hide and use to flank around without being seen, or at least without taking fire from every single angle. At one point, I found a whole cave base that seemed like it was going to make a great sniper spot. There's also tons of destroyed vehicles scattered around and sandbag structures, bunkers, and other bits of cover that kind of just break up the open areas in a way that doesn't make it feel too gamified. Now, as no huge surprise and something I discovered quite quickly is that this cover works both ways, and I certainly had a heck of a time just getting shot and killed by players roaming around what felt like the random desert area. Hell Let Loose is very much a game of patience, as in you kind of have to have the patience to run these crazy 1,000-meter long flanking routes just to have a chance of coming in behind your enemy if you want to get any sort of fun cleanup kill streaks. But there always seems to be like a handful of players just out in the middle of nowhere waiting for you to wander into their field of view. For whatever reason, they also have some patience to just sit around and clean up a kill here or there. But I gotta say, it's pretty cool how players are so free to move around maps in Hell Let Loose without running into any sort of invisible boundaries. Just about every other game with big maps, you can only go so far before the dynamic boundaries start to kick in, reminding you that you are in fact still playing in a video game. But in Hell Let Loose, you can go pretty much wherever you want most of the match, assuming someone isn't, waiting to actually gank you in the middle of the desert. I've also noticed that the team has really stepped up their game when it comes to the visuals. Tobruk's dusk time of day setting is genuinely stunning. The low sun and the warm light raking across the landscape looks incredibly authentic, and you could easily argue it's one of the best looking maps in the game. This new standard of visual fidelity definitely has me excited to see what the devs are cooking up for their rework of Stalingrad, because that was one of my favorite maps in this game, but the performance and lighting just were so off the mark when it came to how the rest of Hell Let Loose played. Now, naturally, the server rotation pulled me into a few other maps, and I got to remind myself on just how much fun it is to play with both sniping and an LMG. Sniping in a more authentic game like Hell Let Loose always seems to be an absolute blast, and it's even better now that some of these maps have gotten overhauls. The sightlines are pretty long, but there's lots of little shrubs and bends in the terrain that really help cut down on the excessive angles that you have to worry about. So once you find a really solid spot to snipe from, you don't have to worry too much about getting blown away by some weird angle you didn't consider. And the same goes for when you're playing with an LMG. I was holding down a hillside from a building and it just felt unfair to a certain extent. It really shows you just how incredibly effective the automatic weapons were in World War II when compared to a bolt-action rifle. And those are kind of the magic moments of playing any sort of milsim game, but particularly in Hell Let Loose, is when They're able to replicate something that feels unfair, imbalanced, but also somewhat authentic to what it might have actually been like. Very much a fish in a barrel sequence for me, and I was having a blast with it. Now, as much as I would love to praise everything about Hell Let Loose, there is definitely some rough spots still. Unfortunately, performance is a problem, even on Tobruk. And while my general FPS was pretty stable and about as high as you would expect from a decent gaming PC, I got very frequent stutters and hangs throughout my matches. I don't know if it was server ping issues. I ended up on a lot of European servers with like 90 to 100 milliseconds of ping. It could have been some weird shader issues. I really just don't know. I'm sort of stabbing in the dark. But I hope they can either fix it or add some more icons and tools into the game to help identify if it is something server issue or if it's something on my side or just why the game might be stuttering. Now, of course, it's hard not to compare Hell Let Loose to some of the other military games that I've been playing lately, and there's no question that Hell Let Loose could use some work, especially in the communications and strategy department. At one point, my team was trying to take the final objective from the enemy, and we just got stuck in a standstill. The enemy team was entrenched in the desert surrounding the town, and we were launching our attacks from the outskirts of town. At one point, I spawned in only to instantly die to an airstrike, and while trying to figure out what was wrong, I noticed our team had 5 outpost spawn points clustered together. Having so many players spawn in such a small area is just a recipe for getting absolutely bottlenecked, but there was no way aside from text chat to try and recommend spacing the outpost out a bit more. It's tough when I've recently been putting so many hours into, say, Armor Reforger, which handles this problem really well. You can use the radio system to pick from either your squad's channel or the channel for the entire team, so there's always a way of making callouts that are really important for the whole team to know about. But in Hell Let Loose, all you have is a squad radio and proximity chat. Squad leaders can communicate with each other, but you're totally reliant on your message getting passed up the chain of command, and there's no guarantee that your squad leader even has a mic. This certainly wouldn't have been a big knock against Hell Let Loose when this game first came out, but I think the quality standards of milsims are starting to kind of punch a bit higher now, and I'd love to see Hell Let Loose kind of elevate themselves on multiple fronts. Now, one thing I never really dove into much with Hell Let Loose was the vehicle balance and stuff, but it certainly feels like transports could use more accessibility. This is one of those issues that can swing one way or the other depending on the players in the server, but throughout my time on Tobruk across multiple servers, the only time I saw our team utilizing transport vehicles was at the start of a match. When both teams inevitably got stuck in a standstill, transport vehicles could be used to help break through those front lines, regain some momentum, create some fun, interesting flanks, but for whatever reason, they just seem to be really rare in Hell Let Loose. I do think giving both teams more opportunities or incentives to run transport vehicles could really help with some of that late game pacing. Now, complaints aside, I think Team 17 are doing a really great job evolving Hell Let Loose into a more approachable but still realistic and authentic looking historical shooter. It's still very hardcore and in depth in that you're gonna have to just expect to die a lot to circumstances that you feel like you have no control over, and it does feel like a lot of other games in this genre have started to add features that kind of elevate the gameplay by making it more fun and accessible without really losing too much on the tactics and immersion front. Hell Let Loose feels a little more old school in its hardcore approach that other shooters are kind of finding ways to get around. Fortunately, the devs seem committed to making big changes for the sake of fun. This latest update further expanded the role of flamethrowers, letting them destroy more structures. And while that might not sound like a big deal, if you ever got the flamethrower before and you're trying to destroy a radio or something and it just wouldn't break, well, it's sort of immersion breaking on that front. I'm excited to see what future updates bring to Hell Let Loose. I would definitely like to see some of that communication stuff stepped up a bit now that I've seen what can be achieved in other titles, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens with this game. It's definitely worth diving into the new map. Had an absolute blast with it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider dropping me a like, subscribing for more content like it, and up next, check out my latest coverage of the next Battlefield game, which is featuring maps that take place potentially in New York City and Los Angeles. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.